Hey everyone, and welcome to The Deep Read. I'm Mike.
And I'm Emily.
And today we're diving deep into a book.
Ooh, fun.
It's called American Diva by Deborah Paredez.
This one, yeah, it's a really interesting look at how the idea of a diva has evolved over time.
And Paredez blends her own personal story with this, cultural critique, right?
Exactly,
It's part memoir, part analysis.
So it's really cool because you get these personal anecdotes, woven together with all this sharp analysis of, what a diva is.
So are we talking opera singers or pop stars or what kind of divas?
All of the above, really.
Okay, so a wide range.
Yeah, and even beyond that.
Oh.
Yeah, Paradise kind of expands the definition of diva to include anyone who embodies the spirit of self-creation and challenging the status quo.
Interesting.
It's not just about being famous or even being a performer. It's more like an attitude.
An attitude.
Yeah, a way of approaching life with confidence and creativity.
Gotcha.
And even sometimes a little bit of defiance.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So where does Paredez start with all this?
Well, right off the bat, she talks about growing up listening to Vicky Carr.
Vicky Carr.
Yeah, a Mexican-American singer.
I'm not familiar with her.
Yeah, she was huge in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
But Paredez's descriptions of her music and her performances, they're really vivid.
So what made Vicky Carr so, important to Paredez?
Well, Carr had this crossover success. She was embraced by, both English-speaking and Latinx audiences. And Paredez sees that as something really powerful.
That makes sense. Appealing to different groups.
Yeah, and she sees it as a way of transcending cultural boundaries.
Right, music can kind of do that.
Exactly, yeah.
Bridge gaps and stuff.
And for Paredez, it sparks this fascination with divas and how they can connect with people from all walks of life.
Okay, I like that.
It's a starting point for her exploration.
And that idea of connection, it comes up again when Paredez talks about her Tia Lucia.
Oh, yes. Tia Lucia, the anti-diva.
Right, she calls her that, right?
Yes, exactly.
So does Tia Lucia a famous performer or something?
Not in the traditional sense.
Okay.
But she had this amazing spirit.
Paredez describes her as really stylish?
Oh, yeah. Very flamboyant and resourceful.
Resourceful, how so?
Well, Paredez talks about how Tia Lucia would make postcards out of tissue boxes.
Out of tissue boxes?
Wow. It's a great example of how diva isn't just about, being on stage or anything. It's an attitude.
Okay.
It's a way of approaching life with, creativity and flair.
I like that. Even if you don't have a lot.
Exactly.
So we've got Vicky Carr, we've got Tia Lucia. Who else is in this diva lineup?
Well, then there's this really interesting section about West Side Story.
Oh, the musical.
Yeah.
I love that musical.
It's a classic, but Paredez and her mother had a really complex relationship with it.
Oh, how come?
They recognized the problematic aspects of the portrayal of Puerto Ricans.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
But they also felt drawn to, its representation of Latina identity.
So it's this push and pull.
Yeah, exactly. It highlights those challenges of representation, right?
For sure.
How even flawed portrayals can still resonate with people.
Yeah, if you're looking for yourself reflected on screen or on stage or whatever.
Exactly. And Paredez is particularly fascinated by Anita.
Oh, yeah, Rita Moreno.
Yes. Paredez sees something uniquely, quote-unquote, brown in her movements.
Oh, interesting.
A kind of singular plural, which captures that experience of being part of a community.
But still, an individual.
Yes, exactly.
That tension is fascinating.
It runs through the whole book, really.
It makes me think of that part of the book where Paredez is in Chicago.
At the club.
Yeah, and the dance floor is divided.
Yes, a microcosm of the city itself.
Right, you belong, but you're also separate.
Exactly, that's it perfectly.
Now, switching gears a bit, what about Tina Turner?
Ah, Tina. Now, she's someone a lot of people would consider a quintessential diva.
Right, the classic image of a diva.
Exactly.
And what's Paredez's take on her?
Well, what I found really interesting was how she connects Tina's music to her own father's experiences.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Particularly the song Proud Mary.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
The song becomes the symbol of transformation and resilience.
Rising above challenges.
Exactly. It mirrors both Tina's journey, escaping an abusive relationship.
Right.
And Paredez's father's time serving in Vietnam.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it's about finding your strength and not being held back.
And Tina definitely embodies that.
Absolutely. And Paredes analyzes her stage presence, like how she became this fierce, commanding performer.
Like demanding attention.
Yes, and she collaborated with, these other iconic women like Anne Margaret.
Sure. It's like they formed this, like, alliance.
Yeah, this sense of female empowerment, like a sisterhood of divas navigating this, often treacherous industry.
They have each other's backs.
Exactly, supporting each other.
So we've got these powerhouse vocalists, but then Paredes takes us to a completely different world.
Oh, yeah, the world of Divine.
Now, for folks who don't know, who was Divine?
Divine was this iconic drag queen, really known for pushing boundaries and challenging expectations.
So a different kind of diva.
Exactly, a diva of transgression.
So how does Paredes connect with Divine?
Well, she describes encountering his performances during her teenage years.
Which is, like, such a formative time.
Right. When you're figuring out who you are, questioning everything.
Questioning the world.
And Divine's unapologetic excess, those flamboyant performances, they clearly had a huge impact on Paredez.
Like expanding what diva could even mean.
Exactly, reminding us that it can encompass this wide range of expressions and challenge all these conventional notions of gender and performance.
I bet those performances were something else.
Oh yeah, there's this real sense of danger and excitement that Paredez captures so well in the book.
And of course, there's the tragedy of his death.
Yeah, so young, just as he was achieving mainstream success.
It adds this whole other layer to his story.
Right, it makes you think about the fleeting nature of fame and those who dare to push boundaries.
It's a lot to unpack.
Definitely.
So from Divine, where does Paredez go next in her exploration of divas?
Well, she turns to someone who really needs no introduction.
Okay, let me guess.
Aretha Franklin.
Oh, of course, the Queen of Soul.
Exactly.
What a powerhouse.
And Paredez writes about turning to Aretha's music during a period of grief.
Oh, wow.
Like seeking solace in her enduring legacy.
I can see that. Aretha's music is so powerful.
Right. And she really embodied Black feminist power and resilience.
Her voice is just incredible, like steeped in gospel tradition.
It's fascinating how Paredez connects Aretha's music to these specific moments in her own life.
Like using it as a source of strength.
Exactly, during those times of turmoil.
And it's not just the music itself.
Right.
It's Aretha's persona, her stage presence, her whole role as a cultural icon.
Absolutely. She performed at so many pivotal moments in American history.
Yeah, you think about the civil rights movement, presidential inaugurations.
Her voice became a soundtrack to the struggle for equality.
And you can feel that in her music.
Yeah, definitely. That power.
So Paredez is really drawing on a wide range of divas here.
Oh, yeah. It's not just one type of performer or one genre of music.
It's more about like what they represent.
Exactly.
Their impact, their journeys.
And how they challenge us to think about the world differently.
I love that.
It's about more than just entertainment,
Yeah, there are deeper layers here, for sure.
And Paredez is guiding us through them, using these divas as her compass.
So now that we've met some of the key players in this diva drama,
Ooh, I like that.
where do we go from here?
Well, one thing that struck me was that Paredez doesn't shy away from the complexities of these figures and the label itself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like she digs into the good and the bad, the empowering and the problematic.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into those complexities.
Me too. Let's get into it. Okay, so, you know how we were talking about that whole diva label?
Yeah, how it's kind of loaded.
Exactly. Sometimes it's a compliment, right? But sometimes it's an insult.
Like, oh, she's such a diva, said with an eye roll.
Right, exactly.
So, how does Paredez deal with that, that whole baggage that comes with the word?
She really dives into how the term has evolved over time,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like its origins are in opera, where it meant something totally different.
Oh, yeah, like those amazing opera singers, the virtuosos.
Yeah, and there it signified vocal power and this whole mastery of the art form.
But then it shifted, right?
Exactly. And she talks about how, in more recent times, it became associated with, pop stars and, well, sometimes a certain kind of behavior.
Oh, that demanding behavior, the stereotype.
Right. But she points out that it's often perceived negatively, especially when it comes from women.
Ah, that double standard.
Totally. And Paredez even talks about this diva backlash that emerged in the 90s.
What was that all about?
Basically, the word became a way to criticize women who were seen as, too assertive or ambitious or demanding.
So it's like a way to put women back in their place.
Exactly. Don't get too big for your britches.
Wow, that's pretty messed up.
Right. And as we were talking about earlier with Tina Turner, this double standard is often amplified for women of color.
Like Serena Williams comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely. Paredes brings her up as a prime example of how, like, a black woman's expression of, like, emotion or even ambition is often met with this hostility.
Yeah, like she can't just be passionate. She's labeled a diva in a
Yeah,
bad way.
exactly. And Paredes talks about that incident at the 2001 Indian Wells tournament.
Oh, wow. Yeah, with the racist taunts from the crowd.
Yeah, it was awful, and it really highlights, the intersection of race and gender and all those deep-seated biases.
And Serena was so young then, too.
It's a stark reminder of the challenges that black women face in these predominantly white spaces.
It makes me think about, like, how much courage it takes to just exist in those spaces.
Totally, and then to, like, excel, to dominate.
And Serena has done that, despite all of it.
Exactly, and Paredes talks about how Serena persevered. She kept breaking records and becoming this role model for a whole generation.
Like a true icon.
And she embodies, those positive aspects of Diva. The resilience, the talent, the refusal to be silenced.
So it's like reclaiming the word.
Yeah, redefining it as a celebration of female strength, refusing to conform to those societal expectations.
Okay, I'm really into this idea of reclaiming diva.
My too is powerful.
So, like, thinking about all these amazing women, these divas,
Yeah.
are there any other threads or themes that, like, stand out to you from the book?
Well, one thing that really struck me was Paredes's chapter on Patti LaBelle.
Oh, Patti LaBelle, such a legend.
She really is, and Paredes seems to have this deep personal connection to her music.
What is it about Patti LaBelle that speaks to her?
Well, Paredes talks about finding solace and inspiration in her music.
Especially during the COVID-19 lockdown.
Yeah, it was a tough time for a lot of people, and Patti's music was there for her.
Like a lifeline.
Totally. And she describes LaBelle's music. Remember, she started out with the group LaBelle.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Paredes describes their music as this vehicle for collective transcendence.
That's interesting.
Like their harmonies, their stage presence, their lyrics. They create this experience that's both deeply personal and communal.
So it's like bringing people together.
Exactly. And we can't forget about their style either.
Oh, yeah, their outfits were incredible.
They were true pioneers, pushing boundaries in music and fashion.
Like those space-age jumpsuits.
Yes. And the feathered capes, the androgynous looks, they were ahead of their time.
It's giving Afrofuturism.
Oh, absolutely. They were one of the first groups to really embrace that aesthetic.
Blending science fiction, fantasy, and black culture.
And their influence can still be seen today. Like, they paved the way for so many artists.
I love that.
And Paredes talks about their 1974 concert at the Metropolitan Opera House.
Whoa! A black girl group performing at the Met.
Yeah, can you imagine that?
Talk about breaking barriers.
And during a time of such social and political upheaval.
Like New York City was in the midst of a financial crisis.
Yeah, and there they were offering this message of hope and resilience.
It's giving transcendence.
Totally. It's incredible how they use their platform to challenge conventions and inspire a whole generation.
And their music continues to resonate, even today.
It's timeless, and it became this lifeline for so many.
So, like, as we're thinking about American Diva,
Yeah.
we have to keep Celia Cruz in mind, too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The queen of salsa.
Paredez talks about going salsa dancing in Chicago.
Yeah, finding solace and community in that music.
And Celia was often the soundtrack to those nights.
Her voice, her energy, it was like a beacon of joy and resilience.
Especially in a city and a time when those things were hard to come by.
And Paradise talks about how Celia's music offered this space for release,
Like a way to let go of your troubles.
Exactly, and to just get lost in the moment, which is so powerful.
Especially for marginalized communities.
It's like music and dance become these forms of resistance.
Asserting your identity and your joy.
In a world that often tries to deny you those things.
I love that. So Celia Cruz is a diva, too.
Oh, 100%. Not just because of her talent, but because of her commitment to her culture and community.
And she paved the way for so many other Latina artists.
Showing them that it was possible to succeed on their own terms.
Without compromise.
Exactly.
So, like, Celia's legacy is important to keep in mind as we delve deeper into American Diva.
It reminds us that divahood can be about more than individual achievement.
It can be about uplift and empowerment.
Spreading joy and resilience.
I love that.
It's a powerful message.
Yeah, this might sound like a weird transition.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
But I want to talk about how Paredes connects her Tia Lucia to the opera Lucia di Lammermoor.
Oh, that's a great point. I was wondering about that.
It's one of the most poignant parts of the book.
On the surface, it's like, what? How do those two things even relate?
Right. But when you think about it, Both Lucias experience these profound heartbreaks,
And betrayal.
this loss of control over their own lives.
And even though Tia Lucia wasn't a performer in the, traditional sense,
Paredez sees her life as a kind of performance,
navigating the world with flair and resilience.
despite everything she went through.
And Paredez describes Tia Lucia's death as her final act of diva defiance,
Wow.
choosing to face her end on her own terms.
That's powerful.
It's a beautiful tribute to this woman who, in her own way, embodied that diva spirit.
It also brings the book full circle,
Yeah, how so?
Like connecting back to that initial idea of divas as figures who teach us about resilience
And self-creation.
and challenging the status quo.
Exactly. It's a reminder that divahood can manifest in so many different ways.
It's not always about fame and fortune.
It's an attitude, a way of life,
Approaching life with passion and creativity.
and an unwavering sense of self.
I love that.
As we're wrapping up our deep dive into American Diva,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to this idea of reclaiming the word diva.
It's definitely been a theme throughout our conversation.
Right. Paredez is really arguing that it doesn't have to be negative.
Yeah, it can be about strengths, resilience.
Refusing to be silenced.
Exactly. And she doesn't shy away from how the word has been used,
Oh, yeah. She acknowledges how it's been used to criticize women, especially women of color.
But she also highlights how divas have challenged the status quo, using their platforms to speak out.
For sure. They've inspired so many.
And she doesn't just present a one-sided view.
No, she really dives into the whole history of the term, how it's been both empowering and limiting.
Like the good and the bad.
It's a good reminder that language is always evolving.
And that the meanings of words can shift.
Based on cultural and societal forces.
So it's up to us to challenge those forces and redefine words.
Make them more inclusive, more empowering.
I like that.
So thinking about all these divas we've talked about.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most significant thread?
That's a good question.
What really struck me was how Paredez connected these seemingly different figures through the idea of transformation.
Oh, interesting.
Each of these divas, they went through this process of self-discovery and reinvention.
Can you give me an example?
Well, think about Tina Turner escaping that abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And then reclaiming her power.
Becoming this icon.
Or Divine, challenging those gender norms and creating this persona.
Outrageous and personal.
And even Paredez herself, navigating motherhood and finding her voice as a writer.
It's like they all went through these metamorphoses.
Exactly. And the Diva label becomes this way to examine these journeys.
Those moments of breaking free.
Embracing your true identity.
And it's not always pretty, right?
No, there are struggles, setbacks, doubts.
But ultimately, it's about finding your voice, claiming your space.
Living life on your own terms.
That's a message that resonates with everyone, I think.
For sure, anyone who's ever felt like an outsider.
Struggling to fit in.
It's a reminder that we all have that potential for divahood within us.
That spark of individuality, resilience.
It helps us navigate life's complexities.
And create our own paths.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into American Diva, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away?
I hope they're inspired to think critically about these figures we call divas.
To look beyond the stereotypes.
See the complexity, the nuances.
Maybe even find some inspiration in their stories.
To embrace their own inner divas.
And use their voices to make a difference.
I love that.
That was quite a journey.
It really was. American Diva is such a rich book.
You've only scratched the surface.
If you're interested in exploring these ideas further, definitely check it out.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Read.
We have so many more fascinating explorations coming up.
And tell a friend. Spread the word.
Until next time, keep reading and keep diving deep.